I'm talking to everybody, and the more people I talk to, the less I know.
Well, there's that.
The more information I get from all these people that have had UFO and alien encounters and experiences and whistleblowers, and the more I talk to them, the less I feel like I know. I do not feel like it's... And then on top of that, I'm in the middle of Jacques Vallée's books, which are very wild. Like Jacques Vallée, I had him on the podcast a long time ago, and he's coming back on again. But the first time I had him on, I only knew him as the French scientist that had... the character in Close Encounters of the First Kind was based on him. Do you know the character, the French character that brings together the military to try to communicate with the aliens? It's based on Jacques Vallée, who's been studying UFOs for decades, since the 50s and the 60s. And boy, the more you read about his take on things, the more it's very confusing, because these fucking stories are the same stories that have been going on for hundreds of years. They're not even modern. You know, when we think of them, we think of like Kenneth Arnold seeing the flying saucers and coining the phrase in the 1950s. Like, no, these stories have been like real similar for hundreds of years. That there's some phenomenon that people occasionally encounter, and it's real similar. It's similar enough from people that weren't aware of the narrative that you have to wonder what the fuck is actually going on.
Yeah, I think you do have to wonder what the fuck is actually going on. On the other hand, I think there's a whole range of possibilities that don't involve anything extraterrestrial.
I think there's a bunch of shit that doesn't involve anything extraterrestrial that's happening at the same time as a bunch of shit that we don't have explanations for.
Well,
that's what I think.
That would not be shocking. If there was something to cover, you might decide instead of trying to keep it under wraps, you would bury it in so much low-quality bullshit that nobody would be able to find it.
That's what it feels like to me. It feels like to me that there's a lot of people that I think are trying to do the right thing, a lot of whistleblowers that are really trying to educate the American public, but I don't know who they really are doing the bidding of. I don't know they even know. I think if I was the government, let's pretend that I was some gigantic arm of the military-industrial complex and I had some literal recovered flying saucers, I would come up with the dumbest fucking stories and put them in binders and leave them on desks and hope that these people leak this shit. And the more dumb shit they leak, the more the actual reality of what we possess. Like, let's say if the government really did find a flying saucer in the 1940s, really did back engineer the propulsion system, really did apply it to drones, and they really are flying them around and they have them. What I would do, I would make up some crazy shit about, a mothership that's 47 years away and it's coming and it's as big as a planet, and I would come up with the wackiest stuff possible and like get it all out there, put it all out there. We have 57 different species all in a fucking freezer somewhere in Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and I'd just like ramp up the bullshit in as many ways as possible. They've controlled all our nuclear test codes and they hover over our facilities. We're powerless to control them. I would say everything as wacky and crazy as possible so I could keep flying around these gravity propulsion vehicles that we've developed.
Well, I must tell you, I'm skeptical that those vehicles are vehicles.
What do you think they are?
Projections.
Projections?
Yeah.
In what way? But what if you could monitor them if you see them on radar, if they visual, they're seeing them going into the water, like what is it?
I'm having a deja vu moment here, or we've discussed this before, I don't know which it is, but the basic rubric is physical stuff displaces air, which means it makes noise when it moves. And
right.
I don't quite see the logic behind suppressing that fully. I don't see the capacity to suppress it fully. Who knows what I don't know? But my guess is if you had actual craft moving around in the ways that people who have observed these things think they've seen it, that noise would be an inherent part of the phenomenon. And
But why would that be the case if it operates on a gravity propulsion system that essentially bends space around it, and instead of creating a sonic boom because it's flying through the air, it's not flying through the air, it's displacing space?
well, I don't even know what displacing space means.
I don't know what a gravity propulsion system means.
Right. So,
But I'm trying to imagine some futuristic sci-fi version of a propulsion system that doesn't involve pushing something out the back. It doesn't involve exhaust, like a rocket.
I'm not necessarily requiring engine noise. I'm requiring
Air noise, passing through the air.
Yeah, passing through the air noise that, as the air collapses, as the craft moves, the air collapses behind it, that you'd hear something.
You mean when it's moving fast?
Yes, especially if it's moving fast.
But if it's not really displacing the air around it, and if this is what allows it to go through the water as well with extreme speed, it's one of the crazier things that they've monitored is something moving underwater that's huge, like size of a couple football fields, at 500 knots.
So this is exactly my problem. Is there's two realms. There's a realm in which I understand the physics of the universe enough that I can evaluate that claim, and then I can say, well, it's not obvious to me how you go through the water. The water has to be displaced, and water is denser than air in terms of how much matter there is, how many particles there are, and therefore it ought to be harder to move through than air. I would expect noise in the air. I would expect something similar in the water. And the fact that these things behave in a couple of different ways. One, they're silent. Two, they turn in ways that would challenge a biological critter profoundly. Three, they move at speeds that are improbable in light of what we understand. Now, I'm not saying there can't be lots of stuff we don't understand, but what I'm saying is all of those things have a simplest explanation, which is that craft isn't matter. Right? It's a projection.
Now, what kind of technology would even be available that could create a projection like that?
Well, that I believe we have. I'm not expert in it, but you can project from above or below onto material. It can even, I think, be done in clear skies, right?